What did I just read? So first, welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the Emissary, which is by Michael J. Edwards, and this is an SPSFC semifinalist, and I'm just going to warn you, this is going to be a negative review. I don't have any positive things to say about this. This is going to be pretty ranty, and so I've been trying to keep somewhat positive on these at this point. This is not one I really can. So that's what this is going to be. So just be warned, you know, if you don't want a negative video, because I usually try to not do a ton of them, then you can skip. I also do want to give a shout out to Josh Witcher on Goodreads, who seems to be the only sane person who rated this book on there and pointed out that they're shocked because I don't understand how this book is rated so well by so many people. This was like just kind of a train wreck from start to finish. So let's talk about the Emissary and get into what this book is about. So this book is set up with a young Holly Burton who is in a city with her father when basically first contact happens. A ship comes from space that's supposed to be from some aliens. They request to meet with the world leaders, and then somebody decides to nuke the city and destroy them because they don't want to meet, because that seems like the best scenario to do. And so that's what happens. And her father dies, and then we jump forward 15 years into the future into who she is now. And just within the first two chapters, the characterization of this character just immediately was like, oh boy, I knew I was going to be in for a ride, because this is like a poster example of like the whole men writing women thing, and why this author should not write female characters, because the character is written, and like by her own words, she's like, you know, I don't play well with others, you know, I'm a difficult woman, I'm what, you know, they call a bitch. And just that whole thing, like the really bad stereotypical strong woman who's just so poorly written, and that kind of thing. And this kind of goes on throughout. It's a recurring theme. That's how this character is set up, that she's you know, she's damaged, but she's come through, and she just, you know, is, you know, on her own and doesn't work well and wants to do her own thing and blah blah blah, and like just set up. And it just came off so crappy with this character, and immediately I'm just like, this is gonna be rough, and it continued to be so. We had with that characterization, just like I said, which just, it comes off as like seriously dated and offensive. Like if you would have told me this was written 40 years ago and it's just like, oh, this hasn't aged well, I would have completely believed you, because that's kind of how this felt. This felt like when you're reading an older sci-fi book and you're like, ugh, that's weird that that's how this is written. But no, I mean, this is a brand new book that just came out, so I don't really know what they're going for. But the thing is, too, throughout this whole story, what's basically set up is that she gets involved as there's a world-ending catastrophe that's coming, and so people are now wanting to try and reach out to the aliens again for help, even though they nuked them the first time. And she's involved with that and is going to try and see what they can do to, you know, save the day, basically. But at no point does she have any agency in this story at all. It's just set up, and then an older man from her past who she just, you know, even though she only does one night stands because, you know, she doesn't want a relationship because she's a strong woman, blah blah blah. An older man from her past who, totally stand-in for the author, I'm sure, comes up and is like, I have this thing, it's gonna change, gets you this interview and help you improve and get on the right track with your life, because, you know, you're kind of a difficult woman with a reputation and you need some help and blah blah blah. And so he's the one who gets her involved, and then once she gets involved, it's just like nothing she does is directly related to her. It's specifically just like, this is going to happen, so on and so forth. And I'm going to get into the parts where I'm going to be kind of ranting a little bit, and so I'm going to be doing spoilers kind of throughout here. Some specific, some not, so just be aware of that, but I don't recommend that you read this book. So if you want to hear about how terrible it was, feel free to keep watching. But so what we have happen is they decide they're going to go on a mission to find the aliens because the aliens had set up a base in the solar system. So they get the astronauts, and they get there, meet the alien, and she's supposed to be like the first contact expert because that's the field. She's a college professor. She's written books. But they get there, and the alien's like, oh no, I know literally everything about who you are and the human race. I've been watching the whole human race since like the Ice Age and whatnot. And so like I know literally everything that you're here for. I know why you're here. I know exactly the answer to the problem. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just give you everything you need and just give you all this knowledge so that you can go back and just kind of get everything figured out. So already, like, the whole setup, and, like, the one good chapter in this book was chapter 3, because it's when the main character, Holly Burton, is doing an interview when she's actually, like, going into the science, the likelihoods of, like, different types of alien species and how they'd be set up, and I'm like, oh, okay, like, first 2 chapters were rough, but I'm like, maybe we're going somewhere, but nope, none of that matters, because the alien is, like, all-knowing and just gives them the answers and just, like, downloads into her brain 100 years worth of advancements of advanced technology so she can go back and try to save things. So she goes back and is trying, but the government doesn't want to listen, and come to find out it's, the rich white men and the corporations, go figure, are controlling things, and you have like they're also trying to make sure that, like, the religious extremists go in and tell everyone she's evil because they're trying to control. They don't believe her. And it's even shown that, like, all the evidence supports what she's saying is happening, but they don't believe her. Like, no, we'll just build underground cities, we'll be fine, because there's like a dying star or a dead star that's floating, and it's going to throw everything out of whack is the event that's happening. It's going to, like, throw the Earth into the sun out of its orbit or something. But so going through, but they won't agree, and so, like, it seems like, okay, so we're setting up, like, the rich elite, the corporations. That's supposed to be like our villain here, which has been kind of cheesy, but that's what we've had, where they're like the rich, like, oh, we can't let her, she's a problem, blah blah blah, we don't like the aliens, it's bad. But so then, well, what's her solution when she can't get anything figured out with the governments? I'll start my own bigger, more mega corporation. Then I can get things done. And then so she starts a massive corporation, does the same thing that the quote-unquote, like, bad guys are doing, just approaching billionaires and be like, hey, you can have a seat on my ship off of Earth if you pay me in order to get this stuff built. And so, like, does the exact same thing that earlier in the book was shown, like, this is what the bad guys are doing. They're approaching the billionaires and offering them tickets into cities. And it even uses the same same, like, phrase both times, tickets to the end of the world, basically, with her doing it as the quote-unquote good guy and then them doing this quote-unquote bad guy. And so, okay, well now, of course, because she's a mega corporation, governments are willing to work with her. So, everything's going to be all right now, but we need a new villain. So now we're really leaning into the villain of the religious extremists, and they're still against it, and this is a big part of the population of the world, and they're like, you're evil. But then, out of nowhere, at one point, the leader of the religious group, who's a televangelist, just decides he wants to meet with the alien. Because there's just one all-knowing alien, by the way, too. And we literally have a scene where, out of nowhere, there's no explanation of why. Like, it was mentioned that as the event gets closer, it's going to become even more, like, undeniable with the science, which changes nothing for the religious people that weren't talking about the science to begin with. And so decides to meet with the alien. The alien's like, yeah, I've refused to meet with literally anyone and forced everyone to go through my emissary this entire time. I'll meet with you, though. That's cool. And they meet, and then they have a long philosophical religious conversation, and the guy just was like, okay, I changed my mind, and he goes back to Earth, and he's like, yep, it's that God sent this alien to save us. I fully support it. And so, okay, well, that's not our bad guy anymore, so who's going to be the bad guy now? Well, now we go to the President of the United States, and he's now going to be the bad guy, which also makes no sense, because I know I haven't mentioned it yet. But before, the person pulling all the strings from the U.S. Was a completely different guy. He was like a secretary of something or another who just been there for like forever, and he was the one pulling the strings completely. But now it's the president, because why not? It's the president. And so now they realize that, oh no, we really do we do need to get on her spaceships and go off Earth, but wait, we need to make this more dramatic and ridiculous. And so they're like, you know what? We need to take over because we got to make sure that only white people get on these spaceships because that Holly Burton, the emissary, she's a liberal and she wants diverse people. And like, this is something real from the book too. I wish I was joking. And so they decide they're going to try and like kidnap people close to her so that they can capture her. And later there's a moment too where like the good guys realize what their aim must be, and they literally use the phrase, this is like a real thing that's said in the book, like, oh, they want to take over the project so they can get the right kind of people on the ships, the white kind. And I'm just like, oh, real thing that happens in this book. And so do a whole thing, and then it ends up that, oh, well, okay. Well, everyone's super loyal to her, and so she's captured, things don't go well, and she doesn't want them to, sabotage the mission, which, I mean, like, God, you'd have to be stupid to do that anyway, but they're like, oh, no, we can't order you to die, you're the emissary, and so she sacrifices herself, and I'm like, okay, we have one little bit of agency because she's just been, everything with her and throughout the book, she's been directed by other people, mostly men, like explaining to her what she needs to do and how she needs to worry about her reputation and how she needs to work with others and, not give up her independence and let other people do stuff. Like, this has been the message that's been hit at her the entire book. And then the information was given her to by a male presenting alien, of course, too, with everything. And that's what's actually causing things to be fixed. But so she sacrifices herself in her one moment of agency, and what happens? The alien's like, no, I think I'm gonna save you. I'm not supposed to really be interfering. I've already interfered a lot, but I'm just gonna save you, and so you're fine now. Okay, the end. And that's how the story ends. It's just like, we're just gonna save her, even though I'm trying to convince you that this character's dead and there's nothing gonna be done. It's like alien's like, no, I'm all knowing, I'm all powerful. Why not? I'll just save you as well. It's fine, no one's gonna care, and just does. And it's just, this whole thing was just absolutely ridiculous. Like I said, main character has absolutely no agency, and just repeatedly the way that her interactions are written make no sense and are just absolutely ridiculous, and just once again show that it's being written by somebody who doesn't seem to understand how women work, or like that women can in fact, do things and have their own personality that's not just assigned to them. And it's just that was a huge thing too. There were a couple of other really weird parts like that where like her bodyguard that's like the same age starts having maternal feelings toward her, which was also super weird. There was even a comment like she'd never wanted kids before, but she felt maternal taking care of the emissary. I'm just like, seriously? Like that stuff was weird, but it wasn't even just that. The actual plot just made very, very little sense. It went every which way. Things just seemed to change. We jumped in time and had things with no build-up or explanation just happen. The barrage of different villains just kept getting more ridiculously over-the-top mustache-twirly villains. Oh, I forgot to mention, too, that we meet the vice president, and apparently he's a rapey psychopath, too, because, once again, gotta really hit in. Not just like racist, but also rapey psychopath, we gotta get that in there, too. It's just, none of these characters felt real or developed in any way. The plot just was an absolute mess, and at no point do you really feel that much conflict because, once again, all of the answers are just given to her. The entire point of it being like the emissary and first contact, it technically is the first contact, but there's no first contact stuff in here because the alien's just like, I know everything. Don't worry about it. Here's the answers. And so at no point do we really get that. And then the conflict is supposed to be with her actually getting like people on the earth to work together to do these things. And it's just like, I don't understand what the messaging is supposed to be with this book. I don't understand what he was going for with this book, but it certainly didn't work because this was just such a jumble. I've just rarely read something that just was so incoherent and nonsensical. And literally, I would have DNF'd this book. The only reason I didn't is because I just found myself, the further I get, laughing out loud to myself because it was so bad. And I had to keep going and find out how he was going to make it worse because things just kept getting worse until we get to that ending, which is finally, I'm just like, yep, of course that's how this ends, as dumb as that is. And I am just, I was shocked to read this. I do not understand how this is apparently a high-rated book. It was just absolute nonsense. And like the only way I could recommend this is if you want to read one of those almost so bad it's good type of books where it's just so awful and kind of fun to make fun of as you read it. And I know I'm probably coming off pretty harsh, but this was just ridiculous. And at no point did it really come and approach a coherent story or like characters that make sense or any sort of actual compelling conflict. It just was absolute nonsense and ridiculousness through and through. So there we go. I know I haven't been super high on several of the books that I've been allotted to read for SPSFC, but this set a new low, very much so for the bar. So here it is, and sorry for the negative ranty review, but my God, this was something else. So that's it for this one. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizardly Do It Discord if you want to chat books, whether, hopefully not this book, let's not, but any other books, anything at all, really. It is a lot of fun, and we would love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.